almost 11:30. We probably want to have a lunch break around 1. If we can get through the majority of these reports before lunch, I think that's probably a good thing to aim for. And then we've got the public excluded item around the airport activity, which we've also got to discuss today as well. So got to make sure we leave some time for that and don't exhaust ourselves. We'll move to item 8. It's now become item 8.2, contracts under delegated authority. I believe Mark is on Zoom. Who's going to run us through this paper? Okay, I think Sean's going to run us through. I believe also this is the first paper of this nature that has been brought to our table this triennium. So, we'll accept some general questions, but we also do want to keep ourselves on topic as well.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. So I could take the report as read. There's one contract in there that was awarded. This paper is a mechanism for us to bring forward to council anything that's basically signed off within the delegations that we have within the council. And so any contract over $250,000 in value comes back through this process to be reported back to this committee. So there's a schedule at the back of the paper that talks about contracts that have previously been awarded. Happy to answer any questions.
Great, thanks, Sean. Councillor Wilson.
Are you ready? Oh, there you go. The contract that was awarded, the $250,000, I was lucky that it ended up exactly on that number, wasn't it? Is this the same company that did the election services last time?
I don't believe so, because council had previously we'd run that process ourselves internally. I think this was the first time we've used an external provider to provide those services. So, yes.
The reason I asked that question is because you'd have to take some serious drugs to run it worse than it was run last time. It was appalling. There were no daily updates. We were one of the slowest councils in the country to get election results. In general, if I was scoring that, it would be a minus number. So that's why I'm really interested to find out if this is the same company. That
may well be a separate conversation, but sure.
No, this is the appropriate place to have this conversation. And again, you see, like I say, if it was $250,001, then we would have had a discussion about this.
So can I just stop splashing?
Yeah.
So you're referring to the current triennium, the election that we've just been through, or the one prior?
The one we just had.
Right. So, this is a new contractor, and this is the first election that they've run for the council. Previously, it's been run by staff, basically. This was run by an independent contractor who, and if you've got some feedback around the quality of that service, then happy to take that on board and have a conversation with them. I mean, I don't know the specifics, sorry, and I guess Morag may be able to talk to it, but again, if you've got feedback around performance, happy to take that on board and look at areas where we can make things better for the next one. If we use this contractor at all, I guess that would be the other conversation. If their performance was of such an issue, I wasn't aware. I hadn't had that feedback previously, so happy. No, I think I was in hospital that month, so I missed out on it. But yeah, that's I guess as much as I could offer today, to take the feedback back to the team and feed it into the assessment process.
Just one final point. When 250,000 is the cut-off point between coming to council for some discussion and somebody can just make a decision out the back, I think if it's going to be right on the cusp, then I think it's probably wise to have a chat for council. I know there has to be a number and there has to be a cut-off point, but when you're right on the line, and if you think there's likely to be any degree of contention, then I think it's wise for council to have their say, because otherwise that probably would have stopped people like me from having a wee rant in this forum, which is very public, and I hope you're listening.
So yes, these are contracts that have been awarded, and I know that we brought some back here through this paper that have been just under, say 240, 245 in the past. So we do look at it from there's also there's a financial trigger, but there's also an information transparency component to it as well. So take that on board for future reports as well.
Cool. And thanks for raising those points, Nigel. Didn't mean to try and shut them down, but was more just suggesting that the avenue through which we could have them heard is through conversations that Sean will have. So thanks for raising them though in the public forum. Councillor Halliday.
Hi. Actually, before I ask my question, I just wanted some clarity. Contracts, I thought we'd given delegation $2.5 million to the CEO. So this is just a report scenario. We don't authorise. You just aren't obligated. You're sort of obligated to just let us know about contracts above 250,000. Just wanted to clarify that. That was all.
That's right. Yeah. So yes, it is to give you visibility over contracts that have been entered into that over that threshold, but below the chief executive's delegation. Anything over that obviously comes back to council anyway for awarding.
Was that all, Councillor Halliday?
Which dovetails onto my next question, which was, thank you for this. This is, as you said, and I may have missed that, this is a new report. This is a bit of a catch-up report with regards to delegations we've had to bring us up to speed, and then we'll move forward from this. That's my take on this. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes, I guess it's a new report to this triennium, but it's how we've been reporting back to the council for a long time since the delegations were changed. I think originally when I first started, I think it was $250,000 was the threshold. So that hits the number.
Cool.
That's right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you through the mayor. Through the chair. Sorry.
Oh. No.
So I have a question in relation to the independent election services. The first point is here it says provision of an electoral officer. I actually thought KCDC provided the electoral officer, or were there two? One here, who is paid by normal staff salary, as well as one potentially in Auckland.
So I think the Dale, don't ask me for the surname, but
Ofsowski.
Was the electoral officer for the election that we've just been through. He was assisted by a staff member, Katerina, a staff member. Yes.
Kennedy, I think, yeah.
Okay, thank you. So I note that this is actually under the heading of discussion, and I was actually going to make very similar comments to Councillor Wilson in terms of the quality of the services that were provided. So the question is, given this is under the heading of discussion, is this, I took that as when we discussed basically that contract.
Sorry, I'm not sure. Discussion. You mean the paper?
Do you mean point 5 on the agenda? Discussion. Oh, yeah. Sorry, Sean, you might just need to turn your mic off.
Yeah, so basically it says discussion point 5 straight into it. So to me, the heading seems to indicate that's an opportunity to discuss this matter.
So are you trying to understand where the avenue is to raise that feedback, and you're thinking that because it's included in here, then you're totally entitled to make some comment as to how you perceived the service to be. I wonder if that's better to do though through debate. But if you have a specific question, feel free to ask that.
So
sorry, we've got Sarah Watty online, so we'll just
Okay.
quickly go to her and then come back to you, Jocelyn.
Kia ora koutou, everyone. Look, I just thought I'd jump in and just make a couple of comments this is the first time we've heard any feedback of this kind, and I do wonder whether it might be worthwhile us reaching out, perhaps one-on-one with you, Councillor Wilson, Councillor Pravanov, and anyone else that wishes to provide specific feedback, so that we can understand the nature of the concerns, and then potentially we could come back with a bit of a summary and a report. If there are some specific issues that we need to explore, but this certainly is the first time that issues around service delivery have been raised, and that's obviously of interest to us, given that this is the first time we have moved towards an outsourced electoral officer role. Sean is correct that in the previous the recent elections, we had an electoral officer, which was Dale Ofsosky and his team. And then we had electoral officials appointed, which comprised Katrina and staff in the Governance and Legal Services team. So I just wonder whether there might be another forum for us to explore some of the comments that you that have been raised in today's meeting.
Thanks for that, Sarah. Are you happy with that, Councillor Pravanov?
Most certainly, yeah.
Yeah,
And
cool.
I think it doesn't really matter what forum it occurs as long as it does. And I think this is probably the very first opportunity where this topic has come up to provide feedback on a new service.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. And thanks, Sarah, for piping in with that suggestion. It sounds like it's supported, so it would be great to see that those conversations happen. And if anyone is particularly keen to provide feedback, maybe just get in touch with Sarah directly, so that that conversation can be set up. Cool. Any other questions on item 8.1 in the report? Doesn't seem like there are. Anyone who wants to move recommendation?
I just wanted to raise a point. I'm certainly not going to go through them now, but at some stage, I would be really keen to know if this information is readily available. On page 9, there's a breakdown of the contracts. I would be really interested to know how many of what that total number is, because I haven't scanned it, but I'm picking 4.5 million, whatever. How many of those are Kāpiti-based companies? And that I am particularly interested in. I'd like to have it at some stage, and I'm not quite sure what the forum for that is. Maybe Martin's committee, I don't know. But somewhere having a discussion about the Buy Kāpiti, just that general thing. So I'm not going to raise this now, but I just wanted to flag that. Yeah.
Did you want to quickly respond?
Sure. The mechanism for reporting the report will have a reference to whether they're a Kāpiti-based company, how much of the services is provided through Kāpiti businesses. That's the general structure to the report. So you could easily go back and have a look at all the previous reports, and it has that information in there. So but, happy to take that moving forward as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks for those questions and bits of feedback as well. Useful to have them raised. So anyone who would like to move recommendation A on page 7? Councillor Kirby, seconded by Councillor Wilson. Right of introduction, Councillor Kirby. No? Any debate? All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Thanks, Sean. Cool, so we're now moving on to item 8.2, Council Priorities and Annual Work Programs. So the contents of this report will look probably pretty familiar to most of you, because we've been the ones that have been kind of working on it, although it's within the kind of structure of a normal council report. But this provides a really good opportunity for us to, I guess, suggest any minor improvements, or adjustments, but also through debate to potentially kind of say our little piece as to kind of what we're quite excited about in terms of these priorities and the things that we would like the organisation to keep front of mind, especially as we recognise what role these priorities and their connection to our work program play in terms of the long-term plan process and the wider kind of visioning work that we're also undertaking, which we'll have our next report kind of touching on. So just wanted to recognise that we have had a good opportunity to work collectively on these. I feel like we have. It would be good if we could kind of keep the conversation to potential new things that we might want to raise or questions that we have around the process thus far.
And if I may, just to set the scene for people listening in, on the 9th of March, SONF, so this committee, we had talked about and agreed to an approach for developing a community vision through to near to 2060. And your councillors and elected members will be undertaking work. In fact, the next item does talk about that over the next 18 months around that. This paper highlights that in the short term, so for this triennium, we acknowledge that there could be a gap in the clarity for priorities as we go through that process with the community. So the idea of the council's top 10 priorities is that it sets the focus for this triennium, and councillors will chat about that. So there's that part of the paper tabled, and the second part is that it also sets the scene for this committee's and other committee work programs, so what comes to the table. So there is a work program attached. I do want to say that we have talked about it with this committee. It is a starting point. I acknowledge that more items will be added to this program over time, and as we start to work together on different items, things may shift, they may be brought forward. So it's really the starting point. And you will see there's colour coding in it. So the colour coding hopefully aligns to the priorities. And even by doing that, you can see that there's a few areas that we know that we're going to have to add a few more things in because we haven't got that fully covered. So we will be coming back to talk to you about that and what more needs to happen. Some of that conversation will happen in our subcommittees, so the social and the climate and environment subcommittees, and we'll be looking to add to that. The annual work program will drop into quarterly work programs, and it'll be through those quarterly work programs that we work with you at the beginning of each quarter to go, here's what's coming through, what else is needed or what's missing, and then we'll be working on monthly agendas from there. So there'll be a drop down to that. So that's how it will work in practice. And I really just wanted to raise that. But today, just to be clear, we are looking to endorse the council priorities as they're tabled. Looking to note that we'll be seeking feedback on those priorities through the work that will be starting off in May to engage the community on developing the community priorities out to 2060-ish. Also to approve this interim work program, and there's a few noting items in there.
Awesome, thanks for that, Chris. Cool, we'll go to some questions from the table. Councillor Wilson.
Oh, well, no, I don't have a question. I have a statement, as always.
Oh, cool. Can we just leave that for debate? Awesome. Could you press your microphone off? Thank you. Councillor Coe.
Right. I had a light bulb moment during public speaking this morning.
Awesome. Lay it on us.
And I think we have an issue around values, and it strikes me that in regard to the reservoir debate, we have an issue between what is legally and technically possible within our rules and resource consents and whatever, and on the one hand, and on the other hand, in relation to our values in terms of how we operate within our community. And so there may be instances where, while we are, within our rights to do certain things, that we actually take a different stance based on our values. And so I'm just wanting to query where values fits in terms of our work program and also the visioning work we are doing within our community. Because to me, I think we need, and most organisations do have a set of values that sit alongside their vision and their, the work programs and all that sort of thing. I think there's a gap there. We don't have a really clear set of values that underpin everything that we do.
If I may.
Yeah, go for it.
I think two things on that, Councillor Coe. As we set the vision into the future, that should shape the decisions that we make and things like consenting and other things we do, because the district plan, for example, has in it, and that was raised with us this morning, things around the characteristics of our community and what we're trying to achieve. So that vision will help with that. I think the second point is that James Jefferson and I have been talking about coming and talking to councillors and elected members around the district plan and the implementation of that, just as an example, and our values and how that works and how it connects. So we have an opportunity to talk about, is that working? Are there any challenges? Is there anything that we need to shift or change, either in what we've set in our district plan or in the way that we're interpreting that through implementation? So that's going to be coming to the table as a briefing. And I think your third point about the visioning work and the values, that's a really good point. We will add in values to sit alongside the vision so that we can pick up on that.
It'd be great. So I think it would be good to crystallise those and communicate them, and then use those as a reference point, as per our, I think it was the last speaker on the reservoir, was talking about, the way in which we operate. I think, that should be a reference point against which we're held to account by the community. To say, well, this, this doesn't fit with your values, even though you are within your rights to do it.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think the point that you made around those kind of being relevant and connected to all of the organisation as well. So not just kind of us as elected members, but they're kind of organisational wide values that we hold. Great point.
Yep.
Thanks, Councillor Coe. Councillor Cooper.
Just on page 14 on our little diagram, number 5 under people. I know we had some discussion around changing the wording of that. I'm still not sure we've got it right. Tourism's not even in the top 10 of GDP for the district. So we're tying tourism into people living in our district. I'm just not quite sure if that's the intent of that, or if it is, why is that that tourism elevated above the other 9 GDP earners for the district? So I'm not quite sure we've got that right, the wording right.
There may be 2 points there, Councillor Cooper. One might be the wording, which we can work with you offline to make sure we've got right. The second point about where it sits in here, this goes back to the prioritisation approach we took together around and this is very technical, so apologies for everyone, the donut economic model, and the fact that earning a living is part of our focus for people, and one element of that is going to be tourism, which you've put in here. So it was more about people being able to make a living in Kāpiti than it was around tourism itself. So if that hasn't landed as well as it could, we can definitely sharpen that up.
Yeah, I don't think it's a major. I think it's just, for me, it's maybe needs to be reframed a little bit. And then just on for page 16, under proposed items 2023 mandated role, I see, this is probably more for the community or people watching, because there'll be questions around refresh of destination marketing strategy, including how we achieve Te Urihi outcomes. And if you slide over to destination marketing and tourism, again, it's got future direction of Te Urihi Gateway. And that project's been cancelled.
So we talked about this. So because that's in Q3, we've already Jan to March. That's already been covered off on. So that can pretty much just kind of ignore that column. That's a recap.
I understood that was more for the people that
cool, nice.
The civilians looking at this and going, hang on a minute.
I thought
it was
No, good distinction to make.
Just
Thank you.
It for anyone watching or reading it.
Good point. Yeah, nice. Thanks, Glenn. That's really useful.
Thank you. That's awesome.
Thank you. Cool. No, thanks for raising that. We've got a question on Zoom. Councillor Spires.
Thank you.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Councillor Spires, we can't hear you just yet. Is there a little pop-up on your screen saying unmute? You should have been prompted, I think. Yeah.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's better, yeah.
Thank you. Apologies if I've missed something through the workshop, but on Appendix 2, Annual Work Programme, the first box, third bullet point, Expert Futures series, approach economic donut model, 15-minute neighbourhoods. And I was just wondering, where did this come from and what does it mean for our community? I think it needs to be defined somehow, because I've spoken to some business people and people in the community, and they actually haven't a clue what it actually means. So, and I must have missed something because I don't know a lot about it either. I'm just wondering if you could how are we going to let the community know what this means?
Thank you, Councillor Spears. Essentially, as we come through with our engagement around our community vision and developing that, part of our rollout will be covering off some topics around things like if we are focused on climate change, for example, one option that a lot of other councils are talking about are 15-minute neighbourhoods. So what that is literally talking about having the amenities that you need for your everyday life and living, like schools and shops and even work, being within a 15-minute vicinity of where you live. And so it's a concept. So it'd be something that we talk about over time. The donut economic model, it's a really technical term, unfortunately. It sounds terrible, but it's basically about what are the needs in our community. So when we come out and talk to the community, they'll be familiar with the word local outcomes. And that's essentially what we're going to be talking about. So what's important to you? Is it health? Is it housing? Is it the quality of our water and our waterways? Is it the use of land? So we will be simplifying that. But once we finish, hopefully once we approve this today, each item in the work program, you'll be able to click into it. And there'll be a little summary of what each item is, so that if somebody's going, what on earth is that? They'll be able to just have a bit of a look at that. And if they need any or would like any further clarification, they can obviously talk to you, or they can touch base actually with me as the person, the GM looking after this committee, and I'll be happy to provide further clarification.
So just to clarify, is the 15-minute, is that driving neighbourhoods or is that walking neighbourhoods?
Meant to be walking.
Yep. It's meant to be kind of like micro mobility, so walking, cycling, scootering, e-scootering, that kind of stuff.
Because there was something in the United Nations around this. Is that where this has come from?
Yes, well, some of the ideas do. So it is an international concept that people are talking about, and I think part of what we'd like to talk to the community about, I imagine, as we go through this, is whether that fits our community, whether there's other things that we're interested in considering, and over what time frame these sorts of things are achievable, because it's not the only it's not the only option we could consider, but it was one that we wanted to get some people in to talk about it, so that when someone says, what is a 15-minute neighbourhood, we'd actually have some information that people could look at. That's what I'll say, it's from the experts.
Yeah, and that was the reason why, too, Councillor Spires, why it was kind of titled or headlined Expert Futures series. So there was a conversation about bringing in a couple of futurists who are quite well kind of apt with these different concepts and their application in different parts of the world, but also in New Zealand specifically. So we might get some more clarity on what these things are and how we communicate them with the community in the near future. So it's a good question.
Yeah, it's just that I've spoken to a couple of business people and some people, and they haven't a clue what it is. So, and the expectation might be that we get a hospital in our neighbourhood. Well, we cannot even get a hospital in Kāpiti Coast. So I just think, the expectations are pretty high. We just need to be real about it.
Yeah, good question, and good point, well made.
Thank you.
Thank you, perfect. So,
cheers, Cole.
Great. Community Board Member Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I'd like to acknowledge all the great work that's gone to this, and a couple of questions I have is actually also around communications. So, am I right to say that the priorities 1 to 10 actually aren't priorities, they're just your top 10? Or are they actually in priority order?
We're going to be working through the communications of the priorities after this meeting. as they are listed at the moment, it was under place, people and partnerships, which came out of a session that councillors had around the focus that we would have through the triennium. So we will be, as we land the comms for this, it'll be through this week, establishing that point.
One of my questions around the actual presentation,
actual ordering
the
of
actual
them.
ordering of them.
Yeah.
I would suggest that we actually replace it with A, B, C, D, or something which doesn't presume an actual priority within the priority.
Yeah.
Right.
No, that makes sense.
So that these are our top 10, but it's not putting anyone ahead of each other.
Yeah.
Right.
Fair point.
The other one is that I think the colours are very confusing. If we actually had in the, let's say, the table of which priority the colours are relating to, if we actually had it listed A, B, C relating back to the priority, as opposed to trying to colour code them all, because it's very sporadic for my vision anyway. Yeah. And I don't understand where the ones which aren't colour coded at all, where they fit in.
Maybe I can suggest that the version you're looking at was colour coded for today's session on request. When we put the links in to a description for each item, we might add in there which priority it links to. And some of the items don't link to a priority; they're just things we have to do as operationally and as either council and the organisation. So I can make that
might tidy
more
it up a bit,
distinct. I think it will. It's just you're looking at the moment a flat A3 now with colour in it, and I acknowledge when I was doing it, I was like, this is hard to get across.
I know, it's difficult. It's such a multi-dimensional array of data here, and try and get it all correlating and matching up properly. Just an observation there. The other observation question that I have is that I believe we should rate communications as its own project or item on our future strategies, because what I'm hearing is that, a lot of the briefings that I'm present for, the information, which is great information, is it's on the website. The public should engage us, and if one of the future sustainable avenues is actually educating our community, how are we educating? How are we communicating? We've failed to communicate about the reservoir and what channels are we using there. All the boards actually don't have a consistent approach to communication. I was just wondering, how can we make it easier for everyone to communicate to the target audiences and get the right information out to people to make this more effective for everyone? Yeah. That's probably my question. And
it's a really good question, and it's been raised a few times so far this triennium, so definitely something that I think we're making clear we really want to see.
I think so. And under for now, the priority number 9, and some of the actions for this year, you will see improve engagement and feedback to the community on what we do and why. I think that is where that piece of work will fit. So we haven't listed everything we'll do to respond to that, but it was something that was identified as a really important thing to do. So I think, to Sophie's point, yes, that will be in here. And just while I have the floor, I might just say that the targeted actions on this page are only for 2023-24. So as we go through the triennium and we get to the long-term plan, other actions for each year will slot into here as well. So,
thank you.
Thanks, Simon. Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you. So I've got a few comments, of actually questions to ask.
Questions.
Yep.
Good.
And they'll be framed as questions.
Great.
Blah, blah, blah. So
Hang on, are they questions or will they just be framed
my
as
first question
such?
is, on page 13, under the climate change heading, this has been brought up before, and staff were going to include environmental impacts. Why has that not happened?
Sorry, can you just point to exactly where you're talking?
On page 13, under the various headings you have in the reports, and it's not only this report.
Oh, you're talking about the report template.
Yeah. So my question is, why has it not happened? I know it's very direct, but you get the question.
We have an action to update that, which is the system heading. I will say that I had attempted to update this for this report, but had an IT error because I was up in Auckland when this was being finalised. It should say climate change and environmental impact, and so that would be coming through as we can make the change to our template for future papers.
Okay, thank you. I accept
It hasn't
that.
been forgotten about, don't worry.
Okay, thank you. So now on page 14, well, I suppose first of all, I think this is a great process to actually get our heads around all the work that we potentially need to and want to do, and I think it's been a great process that we've gone through. It really has. So my next question is, looking at the first box there that says looking after our rivers, streams and oceans, is it possible to also add the word lakes in there and land?
Yep.
And as Chris mentioned earlier on, as one of the targeted actions, improving the quality of our water. My next question relates to 3. Here it talks about developing a climate strategy and an environment strategy, but when it comes to the action, there's nothing to implement a climate strategy. So can that be added in there, please?
That was my bad. I redrafted the wording for that middle box but didn't follow it through. So yeah, that just needs to say implement the climate strategy and the environment strategy. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yeah, that's fine.
Now on page 15, quarter 4, very first top line, strategic direction, it's got environmental scan update. Now this doesn't actually follow through to any action as an outcome, so can that be included somewhere, please?
Do you mean colour coding or what?
So quarter 4 says environmental scan update.
Yep.
But that's where it ends. There's no action
It doesn't
or
carry
any
along across
outcome.
the rest of the...
Oh, right. Maybe I should clarify. So the environmental scan that is referenced here is one that I'll call a pestle scan. So it's looking at the wider environment in terms of political, economic, social, technological, all the usual things. You all looked at doing that when you were first elected. We had a session where we looked at those and everybody had contributed to that. We are just coming back through with an update before we head back out to start to engage with the community to see if there's anything that's shifted or changed. So that's why it's an update, and it links into the work that we're doing with the developing our community vision. It's not the environmental state of the nation that I think you might be thinking about.
Thank you for that. So then, further down on that page, under reviewing strategic programs, it's got climate related, it's got climate change action plan update, maybe something, or something in relation to...
the environment.
Yes, be added in there, please.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
Cool.
Now, also on that page, we've got various policies, and given some of the conversations today around engagement and significance engagement, can the significance and engagement policy be updated sooner than later? And I know that is on the agenda. I think it is well hidden in the normally it's well hidden in the long-term plan, but can that be brought forward so that we can really look at that and actually get a really good understanding and have some input into how we actually do engage with our community, particularly in situations that it's difficult for the community to understand.
Oh, thanks, Jocelyn. We'll pass that to Sean.
Thank you. Yes, so that as part of the LTP, we are required to update that particular policy. So it's linked to that through legislation. So absolutely, we will be doing it as part of the LTP process, which we're very shortly about to start.
There was definitely desire, though, to have an early conversational workshop around the significance and engagement policy, which I imagine would be a council-related conversation, not necessarily a strategy, ops and finance update paper or briefing. Yeah.
So I hear what you're saying, Mr. Mellon, in terms of that's a requirement with the long-term plan process, but there is nothing, I take it there is nothing to stop us looking at it before then. And actually, the policy doesn't have to be signed off and attached with that long-term plan process. It can be done before that, so it's ready to slot into that long-term plan output.
No, I guess it was more that process is imminent in terms of starting, and the engagement associated with that will include what you've asked. We look at that first up front in terms of the that policy.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
You're on red.
Yeah, well, I suppose, you know, that there have been quite a few conversations, not only today, about some of the way that we do some of our consultation and engagement, and, you know, maybe a policy is not needed, but, in fact, a policy is needed, but there's no reason why you can't look at how we do this.
Yeah, earlier, which I think will probably require kind of an offline workshop, but they are two different things, almost like a comms plan or strategy, and then there's the significance and engagement policy, which is a more kind of legislative, structured.
Rules around. So it is a lot more rigid around some of the thresholds that would trigger a special consultative process. Maybe what you're looking at something maybe a bit broader than that really covers how you engage in general.
Which we've talked about too, values-based comms strategy. Right. So values-based comms strategy, significance and engagement policy, both of which we need to have a conversation on. There's been a general agreement that we want to have that significance and engagement policy conversation earlier than some of the other, when it might have come through as part of the long-term plan process. So having a workshop specifically on that, pull it out and actually get to kind of dig a little bit deeper, and then that comms and engagement or values-based comms strategy conversation we also need to have, which will be part and parcel with this, as Simon's been talking about as well.
Thank you. Thank you.
I was just going to note that we'll update this. When you say you're looking to have it sooner rather than later, I think we'd be looking to put something in Q4, which is April to June, to Q1, July to September. I'll just need to confirm that and come back to the committee.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, so on a similar vein to that, this council has had conversations around the levels of service and the satisfaction measures, and it would be good to include that in this document as well under policies, and you know, maybe that is something that can be pushed out to the long-term plan process. But you know, it would be great to capture that actually in this document as well, please.
If I may, the item under Q4 that says review of outcomes and measures is linking back to that point, and part of what we'll be bringing to the table is using the horribly technical term of the donut economic model around needs, and measures that relate to that and are meaningful. Some of those may be understanding resident satisfaction, some of them might relate to trust and confidence, but some of them will be service level measures. So we'd be looking at that with you then. We'd also be bringing to the table some early productivity information, so that some of the information I've asked for is underneath that. And so when the detail under what is the item comes through, it will have that listed.
Thank you. So where is that written?
So this is page 15, and it's in the Q4 column, second.
Oh yes.
Second from the top.
Yeah, gotcha. Okay, excellent.
Cool. Any other questions, Councillor Provanov?
Yes, I have.
Two other people who also want to ask some questions, so just whip through them.
So on next page 16, it's got in here Q4 destination marketing for Otaki. I'm not sure where that came from, because you know, I know there's Elevate Otaki, and there's also a number of other areas in Kāpiti, but only one has been singled out there.
If I may, this relates to the Economic Development Kotahitanga Board and their work program. And because of the work that's been underway around the expressway coming through, there was a specific piece of work around destination marketing for Otaki. And so this is meant to be an update on that. At the same time that this comes through, Elevate Otaki will also be coming to speak to you, so that there's a bit of an update on what's happening or happened through that process. It's not to say that there isn't other work happening across the district.
Okay.
That would be the broader destination management plan.
Okay, thank you. So I have one other question, which is a very quick one. It's in the next couple of boxes down. It talks about connecting with Horowhenua District Council, which is great. But if I can also suggest that Horizons is added in there as well, please.
Horizons Regional, yeah.
Thank you.
Cool, thanks, Jocelyn.
Thank you.
Now we've got Councillor Cofford on Zoom.
Hello.
There we go.
Hello again. Hey, I've just got a question for on page 17, Appendix 2, and it's the old question about the review of the district plan, plan change to intensification. Now, just this morning we heard about the operative district plan having a sort of reasonable setback and a reasonable recession plan. However, plan change 2 with intensification is going to have a more dense and closer to the boundary, and recession angle being steep and all of that. But and a developer comes along and says, look, we comply with all of that, we can get more buildings on the site. And then they talk about rapid consenting process, and they can virtually do anything they want. Now, Councillor Coe raised this question about values. Can we have a mechanism which we can operate immediately where the values of our environments are taken into consideration with these planning mechanisms that the council are using, especially with regard to the rapid consenting process, where I'm told anyone can do anything they want?
I think we might be getting into specifics of a certain point on the work program.
The question is, we're talking about a long-term plan, and okay, the workshops have been brilliant, and a lot of this is feeding in. I'm just questioning, can we have something done immediately to, because we're getting a lot of problems arising, as you see, and it would help the consenting process.
Perfect.
It would help the community.
Yeah, thanks,
and it
Rob.
would just give us a breather. Can I just put that on the table?
Yeah, I'll pass that over to Chris to respond.
Just to note that we are actually going to have a briefing with elected members on the consenting process. We are bringing someone in to talk to you about how it works and what happens, and they will be they will be a commissioner who looks at our district plan and works through the steps to determine things like whether we notify under the RMA requirements, and also how they look at the different features of the district plan currently to determine whether something essentially receives a resource consent or not. So we'll also be talking about different elements of the district plan as we do that, and it'll be at that stage that we can have a good conversation about are there any gaps or challenges in the way that occurs. So that may be something that ends up as a follow-up on this agenda, but we're proposing that would be a briefing at first, so we all have the same information around what happens now.
Yeah, and just on that too, Councillor Cofford, I think it's great that we've identified those environmental outcomes and kind of environmental enhancement and quality is really, really key to us in that priorities document. So that does send a strong message to both the community but also to council as an organisation that that's kind of really top of mind for us, which will hopefully enable some of that further information to be forthcoming. But did you have any other questions?
Thank you for that, and I look forward to the briefing, but really I'm going to keep harping on it because we need to do something immediately. Thank you.
Oh, you're totally entitled to as well. Thanks, Councillor Cofford.
Thank you.
Councillor Halliday.
Thank you. I've either 5 questions or things of clarity. I'll be as succinct as possible. First one is our questions and clarity, points of clarity. Fantastic having all on one page. Thank you very much, and very understandable, which is brilliant. And just clarifying, well, not clarifying. Obviously, this links into our next paper as well around developing our Kāpiti Blueprint.
Correct.
My first question is around locality outcomes and how we're addressing that. And I do note that it's talked to from the Town Centres project in the current timeframe. But I'm picking that this is linked through to the next report, page 20, which talks about the vision and blueprint between March and November. And that's when we're sort of addressing.
Yes.
Yep, cool, thank you. Next one.
Great, Chris.
With regards to number 21, sorry, I don't have a page, around the climate change aspect of things, talks to climate strategy and emissions reduction. I'm just curious to know where the narrative fits in around how we are looking to get our community to buy into sustainability as such. What I mean by that is that, as I've noted before, Council's doing its bit with regards to what it's doing in that space. But a big part of what it is we're trying to do, well, not trying to do, is what needs to happen is changing the perceptions in our community around this as such. And behaviours and that sort of stuff. And we can lead by example, which is great, but we also need to be, I guess, putting leadership into that role, because who else is going to try and force people into this role, whether it be awareness, whether it be whatever. And I know we've got a lot of things in play around that, but I just wondering, does that aspect of the environmental conversation or the sustainability, does that tie in here someplace?
It will.
Yeah.
In fact, underneath one of your priorities, but a key piece that will be driving through operations is a climate strategy or climate change strategy and an environmental strategy alongside each other. It's through that, part of it will be saying, what is it we need to do? What is it we, the community's role in this, our partners' role in this, to inform what comes next, and we'll be taking into account all of the good work that's already underway that's got us to where we are now. But what else? What more, and where are the gaps? So, and that will be an iterative thing. I know that you're all aware that Tūkutai Kāpiti is it's on its journey, and the idea of adaptation in some spaces. That won't come immediately. We'll be lining work up sequentially so that we are having the right conversations at the right time, and that we've got the opportunity to hear from the community about different aspects of this. So it's about us doing it together rather than it just being something we put on a document and then file away.
Cool. I just wanted to bring it to attention. Next thing, what I did notice in this document, and correct me if I'm wrong here, not a lot of mention of mana whenua, not a lot of mention of Māori and that sort of stuff, but how you have it listed at the top of the document, I expect that means that we're just looking at weaving this through the whole thing.
Correct. Yeah.
Fantastic. I think that's absolutely brilliant. So that's cool. Number 4, page 16, in the box that I think, in the quarter 4 box right at the bottom, second square up, you have the word play in there. I was just wondering what that meant.
Could be football.
Could be. It could be football and soccer. It's more in that recreation space. So I think it was meant to be not work and not just living. It's the stuff you can do in our community to participate. Yeah, absolutely.
Fantastic. No, that's cool. And the only other thing I had was you mentioned futurist, and we're going to get futurists in. Hopefully, we've got some local people that can fit that equation, who have got that understanding in context with us as well.
We'll make sure that we do
Most
that.
of them, yeah.
The crystal ball.
Yeah. No, good point, Martin. Thank you.
Lovely. Thank you.
Awesome.
Well done. Well, it'll come from Paikō
Yeah,
Creek,
very succinct. Well done, team. I think those are all the questions that we have on this specific report, but realise that there might be some things people want to say in debate, which is good. Just to kind of talk a little bit about kind of the context of our priorities and what we've got in here, and yeah, kind of where we hope to see these go. So is there someone who wants to move the recommendations on page 10? There's 6 of them. We can move them all at once. Cool. Councillor Wilson, seconded Councillor Halliday. Right of introduction, Councillor Wilson.
Well, because I was going to speak anyway. So.
Smart.
I actually said at the beginning of this training I wasn't going to do this, but I'll do it. This is an excellent piece of work. I think what this does is I know it's the second time I've done it. Oh my God. Yeah. But what I think this does is it goes to sort of fundamental philosophies that drive council, and there's existential reasons for council being here. Challenging what those are, I think, is fundamental to good democracy. So, going back to Sister Liz over there, and Rob raised the same point. One of the things that drives a philosophical position is your value statement. What are the values that drive your council? What are the fundamental things, the fundamental reason for being, if you like, back to the existential crisis that we may or may not have. And I understand this is a work in progress, but I would just like to emphasise again the importance of having values that drive everything else, right? And we've seen, and it can go from macro to micro very quickly. So someone comes in this morning and they go, fundamentally, the microcosm of their argument is that our values don't reflect theirs. They don't reflect the community. We haven't been listening, we haven't engaged correctly, right? So those are they are basically making value statements about how we operate. And I find myself in agreement with them. I also, when it comes to things like notifying consents, for instance, and council always has discretion to notify or otherwise, regardless of what the law might say. And again, that's a values-driven argument. So fundamentally, if we're looking deep down, why is it that we do what we do? Who are we being fair to? Who are we being unfair to? That kind of stuff. So I'd like to see that inculcated right through this. It's a work in progress and it's not going to happen straight away. But I think if that's at the corner of our thinking, that will also drive things like our communications, how we communicate with people, why we communicate with them, who we communicate with, etc. So that's what I'd like to see.
Cool. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Halliday.
Well, I didn't make that undertaking, so thank you very much. Look, this is a fantastic piece of work. What I love about it is the simplicity of it. What I also love about it is all the complexity that we know went on behind the scenes to get to this simple document. And rather than it being presented as a complex document, it's been presented as a simple document. So thank you very much for that. And I think anyone looking at that there's some clear pathways there. There's things that people can tick off as outcomes as such as well. So that's fantastic. And look, from my end, we did a lot of high-level stuff in the last triennium. We're getting closer to the rock face, in my opinion, and this gives us our pathway to actually get outcomes in that space. So I do thank you for that. But also what I wanted to thank you for was the process around all this was a fantastic team-building exercise. And I just wanted to acknowledge that. That wasn't necessarily the intent, but the fact that we were interacting well with staff, officers, on all levels, but also amongst the team with the community boards involved, with the mana whenua involved, and with all the councillors involved. It was great as a start to the triennium, and that this has been landed so quickly means we can get off and and start ticking things off. So thank you very much.
Kia ora, Councillor Halliday, and total for those thanks, those immense thanks to Chris and the team. Councillor Kirby.
I'd also echo those comments around the great piece of work. I know I wasn't part of some of the initial stages of it, but it's exciting to see this. And I think for me, I would also agree with what Councillor Coe said earlier about values driven, and again, Councillor Wilson said that just before in his introduction. One of the things that I've seen a lot this week is, as I see across our elected members, that there are some common and shared values that we want to see flowing through this organisation, and how we engage with our community and how we get the outcomes that our community is feeling like they're contributing and have some level of ownership or at least input into. And so this is a great start for us, and I would say that it is a start, but it's better than we were when we first walked in. And I think if I share this around the table, we all feel a sense of ownership of this document, and that I can look at it and go, yep, there's things in there that I know I'm passionate about that are reflected in this. And I'm sure that most of us around the table could also say that. So I think that's exciting for this triennium and setting this district up to be the best place to live, work and play. Thank you.
Kia ora, Councillor Kirby. Councillor Coe.
Yes, thank you. Look, I think this document represents a shift in how things are done around this table. And, you know, I have been a bit of a driving force behind making it happen. And the reason is that I have felt, as an outsider looking in, you know, before I was elected, I have felt that there hasn't been enough strategic governance around the table here. And so I have pushed pretty hard to have time for some sessions where we could state, you know, our objectives, what we wanted to achieve during this triennium, and to make it happen, rather than be in a passive role where stuff filters up from staff and we act as a rubber stamping kind of exercise. So this is really reversing that situation of, or making sure that we don't have the tail wagging the dog, that we as elected members are setting the strategic direction for our work program and for what happens in our community. So I think, you know, I believe it's probably the first time it's ever happened this way, and it's a learning exercise, but I hope we can learn as we go and build on it and get even stronger in terms of this kind of approach, so that we actually do make some real significant change in our community, take things forward. Because I know one of the criticisms that was outlined in that independent review that was done of council was there was not enough strategic leadership from elected members. So now's our chance to really to fix that and to be the driving force for our community. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Coe. I'll just also team, can we just draw ourselves back, please? Thank you. We'll just also add in some brief comments before we pass back over to Councillor Wilson if he wants to do a right of reply. He's welcome. And I really agree with Councillor Coe in that, I think, and what Councillor Kirby was saying in terms of this being hopefully a document that we can all feel quite proud of, and knowing both what sat behind it in terms of the process that Chris very ably walked us through and supported us with, and really grateful for that support, but also for the kind of open-minded way of thinking that we all engaged in this process with, aspects of real collaboration. And I think that's something we should all hope to foster through the community visioning process as well, and this being a really awesome kind of springboard into that work. And I think when we think about the outcomes that this has the potential to catalyse, while it's also a start, as has been mentioned, and it's a start, it's a good start. I think it's a start that is great to have so early in the triennium as well, and again, what it represents. But when we look at kind of those place, people and partnership aspirations and priorities, I think some of those actions, especially if we, as has been said, this is the 23-24 version of this document, to think that those actions we will be doing over the next year is exciting, and the impacts, the flow-on effects that those will have onto our people and onto our environment is really cool. So it's something that I think we should be proud of. We should also be quite aware that it needs to be living. It needs to be something that we keep revisiting, that it cannot just be something that today we say, cool, community, here are our priorities as a table, and what do you think? But it's actually something that we continue revisiting and have those channels through which we can assess kind of where we're at, how we're tracking, and where those gaps might be, as Chris has talked about earlier. So very much just a start, but I am proud of especially the presence of our kind of climate action within our priorities, and I'm really grateful for councillors and their support getting that really top of the agenda, and the aspirational steps that we're looking to take in that space, because we know that now really is the moment to make sure that our planet is healthy and here for our next generation, so we can play a role in that, which is really exciting. Right of reply, Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, I'll keep it very brief. Just part of, and it hasn't been mentioned yet, but part of what has informed this process has been the fully collaborative nature of it, and which included the 4 community boards. And previously, that hasn't been the case. The community boards have kind of been outliers, and yet they're fundamental to making something like this work. And the community boards have been sort of deeply involved in this. So again, that ticked a very important democracy box for me. And yeah, okay, one last time. Well done, Chris. To you and your mob. You've done a really, really good job, and this is I'm quite optimistic about where this goes. Yeah.
Yep, second those comments about being optimistic. Cool, so that's moved by Councillor Wilson, seconded by Councillor Kirby. Councillor Coe seconded that. All those in favour? What was that, sorry? Oh, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Halliday, all those in favour? Against? No, that's carried. Thanks, Chris. And thanks to everyone for their part that they played in the creation of that Living A3 document. It's exciting. And thanks, Liz, for your leadership too.
Just do an open piece and then hand it in.
Perfect. Okay, cool. Drawing your attention back, we'll try and get through 8.3 and our next item, 8.4 as well, hopefully before we break for lunch. So developing our Kāpiti Blueprint, April update on visioning work with the community, quite a nice flow on from the paper that we've just had in front of us. So Chris will do an opening and then pass over to Ange.
Well, in the last item, I had just mentioned that we'd been focusing on the shorter term with our council priorities. This paper is pushing us back out to the future space, and it is the next step on from the 9th of March committee meeting here, where we talked about co-designing the approach. So what I just wanted to really say at the beginning of this item is that today is still part of the co-design phase. So Angela is going to talk a bit through this session, but I wanted to highlight to you that the next step for this at our next council meeting is going to be landing the engagement approach, which will be a document that we'll be getting you to consider and sign up to, and the project or program timeframes for this. So if anyone was wondering, where are they not here? They will be coming to council. So part of what we have been doing with our councillors and our community board members is a series of engagements or briefings to start to lift material up. We're working at pace, and so behind the scenes we're also having to make sure that we can manage the pace of that, hence why we're doing an update today and another contact point at the next council meeting. So I will hand over to Ange.
Kia ora. Yes, so this is just as Chris was saying, the next sort of step along the road, following on from our 9th of March meeting. So this paper is just seeking your endorsement to the approach that we've discussed with you in the 2 meetings that we've had in March, so one on the 14th and one on the 28th. So where we were talking about progressing our vision and blueprint and establishing engagement. As Chris mentioned, the notes from those 2 sessions are going to be worked up and delivered to you in May for further discussion. But this, otherwise, I would largely take this paper as read, as it's just covering off the workshops that we've all been in together, and is just an opportunity for this to get on the table in a public forum and be discussed. So I'll hand it over to you guys.
Kia ora, thanks, Ange. Any questions on this paper? as Angie's indicated, predominantly just an update and an endorsement of the approach moving forward.
Happy to move the motion, Madam Chair?
Cool. Any other questions before we roll with that? Awesome. So moved by Councillor Halliday, seconder. Councillor Coe. Right of introduction, Councillor Halliday.
Waived. Just echo the comments from the last.
Perfect. Any debate? All those in favour?
Sorry, just a quick observation.
I was getting a bit too excited.
Yeah, sorry.
We just want to crack on with this visioning mahi. I'm ready.
No, it's just that I just like the councillor-led communications will be key to progressing this work with our communities. I'd just like, perhaps if next time, if that's just in, say, 26-point bold, so we all remind ourselves that that actually is the case.
Yeah.
And that it's then incumbent on us to make sure that that is happening.
Cool. Yeah. And I think also, in addition to that, councillor and community board led.
Community board.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know about that.
Simon.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. And look, I just want to reiterate that, in the longer term vision, what we're trying to do, and the biggest challenges is we're changing from a carbon, petroleum-based economy to a cyclic one. There are going to be many pain points. I completely endorse all the types of communications we need from the community, because we need to understand the impact of everyone. We need to bring everyone along on this journey. And, that's why our communication is not just us getting information out, but, if we from the response from this letter, got a very poor response, then we're not doing our job as communicating properly or receiving communication properly. So we need to really up the ante on that one, personally. Thank you.
Yeah, good point. Links back to that values-based comms strategy. Yeah, concept. Perfect. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That's carried. Now, we don't have Rob Dunn with us yet, who is presenting the next report.
Yes.
He might have thought we were going to take a bit longer than we did. Do people have, just to get an indication, do people have a lot of questions on this report, or a lot of things that they want to say? I'm just wondering whether we should just wait for Rob and get it done and then have lunch, or whether we want to have lunch because it's going to be a long conversation. I would personally be of the mind that we just try and get it done before lunch.
I can maybe ask questions.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Okay, we'll just, we can have a slightly later lunch. Maybe let's take a 5-minute break then, just to grab a cup of tea, stretch your legs, and we'll come back once Rob is with us.
Don't look.
Oh no, actually, no, never mind. Stay where you are. Stay where you are, everyone. Yeah. Oh, perfect, you heard us. You listened in.
Yes.
Kia ora, Rob. Oh yeah, very colourful as a team as well. The yellows, the blues. Yeah. Very nicely patterned. All right. So we've got with us Rob and Ninka, Climate Action Grants Allocation Policy. So originally this was going to come to the Climate and Environment Subcommittee, but due to time constraints in their meeting, it's now coming directly to us, which is cool because then it means we can all have kind of, in terms of the first conversation that it's being had in the forum of, that's us. So yeah, looking forward to the chat.
Tēnā tātou katoa, ko Rob Dunn tuku ingoa, ko au te kai tohu tohututanga hapuri ahau. Nō reira, tēnā tātou katoa. So thank you for the opportunity to present this climate action grant policy today. I take the report, policy and associated documents as read and welcome any comments or questions.
Awesome. Councillor Coe, over to you.
I really only just have one, but it's quite a big one. So I, just by way of background, I've got about 20 years experience in terms of dishing out grants through various organisations. And one of the things that's really important with these kinds of things is to make the process easy. And especially when you're acquiring when you require a lot of information to be submitted. And that can be a bit daunting for people, especially if you're looking at household groupings as we're doing here. And so I'm just wondering if we can have a two-step process. So what a lot of grant-making organisations are doing now is having two layers to applications. And so the first layer is just an expression of interest, like, here's roughly what our idea is. Does this, broadly meet your criteria? And then if so, if it passes that test, then it goes to the next layer, which is providing all the budgets and the detail and the whatever to support that application. And I just think with something like this, I think that would work a lot better than requiring people to do a lot of intensive effort to submit an application without even knowing whether they're in the right ballpark with what they're proposing to do. So I just wonder if we could give consideration to that, and also whether the other point is whether it's an online process that makes it really easy. Because this whole area of applying for money is just it's a nightmare for people. So we want to encourage people to be creative and to have a go at it. So therefore, it's all about making it easier. And if it was me looking at this list of requirements as someone that's new to applying for these kinds of things, I'd be going, oh, this is too hard. Just encourage you to think of, what are the ways in which we can make this simple, especially for people that have never applied for funding before.
Tēnā koe, Councillor. Thanks very much for the comment. We have currently proposing a two-stage process with EOIs for any applications over $30,000, but there's no reason why we can't make that a two-step process for all applications, which would simplify things exactly as you described. And in terms of the formatting, it'll be very similar to the other grants we offer. There'll be an online application process. People can submit in paper if they prefer, but there'll be a very clear online process. So this is more about the content, and then there'll be a streamlined online application process, very similar to other grants we offer.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, Ninka just wants to add something on that.
Kia ora, everybody. I just want to add and refer to our waste levy grants policy that you're probably familiar with. That has been really successful in the last 12 years, and we have had a threshold for AOI similar to this. So when people are asking for far substantial money, we completely agree they would never go into a full business type concept without knowing that they're actually the preferred candidate for that grant. So that's exactly what this is doing. However, there's also people that apply for a $1,200 grant. And so there's a bit of a gliding scale. If there's a two-phase process for $1,200, that will actually pose a threshold to people applying, because it really depends on the type of information, which relates back to the amount of money that people are asking for. So that's why we put it at $30,000 for this grant, because then we know that we're asking people to do some substantial work to obtain that money, and so only the people that are passing the AOI stage will then be asked to provide that information.
Right. So
just 1 second.
Oh.
We just need to wait for Liz's mic to come on.
So so is there the same, in terms of completing forms and that kind of thing, is there a similar level of documentation for those two categories? Because it sounds to me like, there's possibly two processes here that require different levels of information.
Yes, in a sense. I think the AOI and the application form is the same for everybody. It will just be treated as an expression of interest if it's for $30,000, which means that if you're applying for a lot of money, you can expect another conversation for the people that pass that first threshold. and then they will be required to provide more detailed information.
Hang on.
Which
So
is more business case.
So the EOI is same for everybody, and some people will be given money just on the EOI.
Well, it's called an application, not an expression of interest, but they're similar.
Right. I just, it was a bit confusing to me reading the document. I'm not sure how how clear it would be to someone else reading it as to how it works practically.
I totally take your point, Councillor, and agree that simple is good. And I think we can, without diving too much into the detail, I think we can make sure the application process is simple, and whether it's a two-stage application process for everybody or a slightly tiered system depending on the amount applied for. But take your point that this seemed complex to you, and therefore there is room for us to make it simpler.
Yeah, I think so. Yes. Okay.
Councillor Halliday.
Through you, Madam Chair. My first point is thank you for putting down the challenge, Rob, with regards to when you present next time. I will look at the tie I'm wearing with regards to that. I think that looks great. Two other points was clarifying on page 37 who can apply, and I suppose this is a little bit dovetails into what Councillor Coe was talking to. I appreciate that the funding's not large, and you get a couple of large funds, you know, there won't be a lot of funds there, but the criteria seems to be fairly high in numbers, you know, at least 10 households, you know, businesses of up to 30 employees, which really rules out any small business as such, an education institution. It sort of falls into what I was talking about before with regards to how are we getting this sustainability message into the community in an easy way and that sort of stuff. And sometimes it is just encouraging those really, really small initiatives, if you like, which can potentially grow as such. So that was just some thoughts around there. We're trying to encourage pretty much anyone to get involved with regards to some projects. Some projects could be really, really small, could only be $500 or something like that. It just could be some neighbours getting together for a community rubbish bin, say, for argument's sake. I don't know. But there doesn't seem to be a lot of scope for that. Well, this could just be a first stage, but I'm just getting it a lot more, and it's coming a lot more regularly. We need to have more urgency here. We need to have more urgency here. And this is maybe a small pathway that can help as part of that equation. The other thing is number 18, and I'll take a page out of Councillor Cooper's book. We're looking at subject to translator availability, the intentions of this policy and associated documents treated into Te Ao Māori. Why I can appreciate the intent, to me that's a nice to have scenario, and one, I'd like to know how much that would cost and that sort of stuff as part of this process, but I didn't feel that there was a need to have this translated as such. I think we've got to be a little bit careful that we don't get too carried away with regards to what we think are the right or wrong things to do in this space. And to me, translating a whole application document of Te Ao Māori from a council perspective tends to be a little bit overkill from my perspective. So I just want to put that out there. Yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Cool, thanks for those comments, Councillor Halliday. Councillor Wilson.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. In terms of criteria, does the applicant have to be based in Kāpiti, or just have to be a benefit seen to Kāpiti?
Tēnā koe, Councillor. Thank you for the question. You're right that it's not currently a requirement that applications come from Kāpiti residents, just that the project offers a benefit to Kāpiti. But that's something that we could easily address and ensure that we have Kāpiti residents applying for this fund.
Right. And I also wonder, there are a number of online initiatives that have quite significant climate action values attached to them. They're online, so if there was a Kāpiti web-based business that was doing work that could have a broader value, would they be eligible? Or does the there might be a planetary benefit of someone who comes up with something really quite innovative, and there's a lot of young people out there doing some amazing stuff online now in this space. But it might be hard to quantify the value of that directly to Kāpiti, but they might be a Kāpiti base, and there might be a huge value to it, and without a huge cost.
Yeah, I think this being a new grant, we've deliberately tried to keep the criteria reasonably broad, just to make sure that we can give all the money away. Depending on the applications that we receive, there might need to be a bit of judgment made there. If, as you say, we have projects that offer great benefit but not directly to Kāpiti, or ones that maybe offer less benefit but have a more local focus. So the criteria, you're right that the criteria isn't clear around that, and for this first funding round, I'm not sure that's a bad thing, just so we cast the net wide open.
Could I?
Oh yeah, sorry, just on that, Councillor Wilson, I think Sean was keen to. Yeah, there you go, Sean.
I was just going to add, maybe we should prioritise those applications from Kāpiti as opposed to exclude or include. So that way that could be the first sort of cut, but if there are ones that are coming from outside that could benefit, or if there's something wider, then you at least still get them put through the process.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Not now.
No, perfect.
Sean,
Councillor Cooper.
Spotted that one.
Page 30, climate action grants for initiatives will benefit Kāpiti Coast in one of the more following areas. And I see supporting mana whenua vision and priorities, and they are as outlined in the long-term plan. Now, most of those don't actually even relate to climate health, climate change, reduction of emissions, like supporting each other, connectedness, identity, possibly preserving or creating teaching and knowledge. Considering these are large amounts of money, should that not be supporting mana whenua vision priorities, specifically kaiti ki tanga and perhaps puku tangata? Just drawing down a little bit more, not so broad.
Tēnā koe, Councillor. Thank you for that comment, and we'd actually also identified that, and you're right in that there is room for us to clarify how these mana whenua vision and priorities in relation to climate and environmental action.
Yeah, and awesome, thank you. So you're across that? Yep.
Yeah, I think they're sorting it,
And just, I see it's got a iwi flavour through it. Will they be prioritised above other applicants, or will it be based on outcomes? So if I've got a really good outcome, but mana whenua have a awesome thing, but it doesn't have the outcomes, will they get priority?
Thank you for the question, Councillor. It's the development of this policy is a collaborative process with mana whenua, but the decision making will be outcome focused.
Brilliant.
Nice.
Thank you.
Councillor Pravanov.
Thank you through the chair. It's great that this paper is now, I suppose, come into the public arena to be discussed, because as you mentioned, there wasn't enough time to speak to it through the Climate and Environment Subcommittee. I made a few comments. I think it was the staff and maybe you, Sophie. I can't remember now. And I suppose that they were relating to the criteria. And if you look on page 33, they listed quite a few different places in the document. One of the things that I would like, I asked that this is included in the objective, and this is actually is to include improving environmental outcomes. And the reason that I would like this included is that when the subcommittee was presented with the climate action outcomes, and also came to I think it was this council, this committee. There were a lot of items in there that included actions that were in the work program that included to improving environmental outcomes. There are a number of things in there. So I asked that this is also included in the objectives, please.
Tēnā koe, Councillor. Thank you for the question. Look, while there is a natural link between climate and biodiversity, and they go hand in hand in terms of issues and solutions, my understanding is the council has other grants that are focused on environmental projects, for example, the heritage grants and restoration grants. So while someone could have a project that has a conservation or biodiversity focus and apply for this grant, and where we've stated that clearly within this, that this could be open to conservation and restoration projects, I'm not sure that we need to be more specific than that, because other grants already exist. And climate is very much on top of mind for a lot of people in the community, and it's nice to have something focused on climate action.
Thank you for that. In terms of those other grants that are available, do people who apply for those have to be registered in some way? So it's not actually just the case of where a community group can apply for them?
I'm just aware of what recently has been published on the website, where there was grants allocated for wetland restorations, these types of things. I'm not fully aware of the criteria of that particular policy.
So I suppose specifically I'm thinking about improving the quality of water, or actually even monitoring it.
Yeah, just on that though, when we did set aside the money through the Three Waters, Better Off funding, we did specifically say emissions reduction, behaviour change, kind of some of those community outcomes in terms of reducing emissions district-wide, which plays in nicely into our district-wide emissions reduction work and strategy.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I'm going to flag that I will be voting against this this grant. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for flagging that. Community Board Member Simon Black.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Tēnā katoa to you both. Now, I'd like to support the views of Liz. Look, for my expectation of applying for grants as a business, some of the observations I have is that there's a lot of hoops to be jumped through, even to the point of, I remember applying for a trade and enterprise grant years ago, and the language was so different from a business language that there was an industry out there of people translating our needs and grant to the language of the government grant, and they would take a slice of of whatever you were awarded out of that, because they were so hard to translate and so hard to actually get processed. So my observations are, it would be great to actually have a process, published for people applying, an expectation of how long the decision will take, and how long the application will take to actually bring all this information together, so that people get an understanding of how big a process this is. Also matters around things like intellectual property, who owns that, any intellectual property which comes out of whatever process or output of whatever's been proposed. So and also not too prescriptive. I've applied for grants after a huge hoops being jumped through, and because we're a small business, we had to change one item to another, and we couldn't, because it was locked in stone, and they said, sorry, no funding available this year, got to wait next year again, and we couldn't even use that. So in the end, we just made the decision that we wouldn't apply for grants anymore, because there was just too much effort involved in getting them. So it deterred me from actually applying for grants.
Some of the information you have mentioned is in the guidelines, so the time frame is actually there. That will all be published. We have ample room to start communicating that this grant will become available. And when it comes to be available, Rob is always on call of anybody who wants to apply to answer questions. The application form is completely modeled on our really successful waste levy grants process. It's never spooked off any business applying. I can reassure you of that, because we've given many funds to businesses. So it's quite a low threshold. The application form online is very plain language. It's not hard to understand. We make it really low threshold to just grab the phone and talk to Rob, and he can assist. So I feel today the focus is really on the on setting the policy in place, and then the guidelines and what will appear on the website. We're working on that with the communications team at the moment.
Thank you. That's great.
Awesome. Thanks, Simon. Councillor Warwick.
My question is just around the time frame between today, if it's approved, and when we can say to people, well, it's on the website. Like, is it going to be a week, or is it going to be 2 weeks? Because if we get to the end of April, people only really have less than a month to kind of formulate their plan about, you know, with regard to schools and stuff, they need quite a bit of time if they're going to have students involved in projects.
Tēnā koe, Councillor. Thank you for the question. Look, approximate time frame, assuming approval here, allowing time for us to make these changes that are being discussed now. It'll allow 3 to 4 weeks to notify the public that these grants are coming. Within that period, information will be available online. So it gives us 3 to 4 weeks as a lead-in to socialise this policy and to answer questions. There's a comms plan involving radio and newspapers, and then applications are open for 7 weeks after that. So it's a longer process than normal, but this is a new policy, and we want to ensure there's plenty of time for people to get their heads around it and have the opportunity to ask questions, and we're here to support them.
So that time frame is basically from today to closure of the fund, which is on the 7th of July. So there's plenty of time. The reason it has been brought out slightly is because we have to go back with the recommendations to the subcommittee and then come here for final decision, because currently there's no grants subcommittee in place for this particular process, because simply the funding hadn't been approved when the structure was put in place in October. But it allows us plenty of time to go into our networks, advertise it very widely before it's advertised as being open, and then it's open for 7 weeks. Yeah.
Okay, so that's my next question are we able to flag to people from this day forward, if we approved it, we could say, hey, there's this grant coming up, and can we share,
totally.
can we share that
Absolutely.
information on the criteria?
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is in the public agenda, so you're more than welcome to send them the link to this agenda to say, here's an overview of what.
I'll be working with comms after this and early next week, and actually sending out a email to all relevant stakeholders in the community, advising that this is coming. But with applications scheduled to open on the 22nd of May, still gives us plenty of time to let people know this is coming and to support them.
Cool, there don't seem to be any further questions. None online either. Yeah, thank you so much, Rob and Ninka. Really, really awesome mahi. Anyone like to move the recommendation on page 27? Councillor Coe, seconded. Councillor Kirby, right of introduction. No, waved. Any debate? Doesn't seem to be. I would just encourage anyone who may or may not be listening in to share this around once it goes live, and the same for all of us. I think we can each take on a role, getting those in our community who we might be aware of who have really good ideas in terms of emissions reduction activities, or who are already doing things in this area who could really benefit from some extra support. And I know the team would be really willing to receive those applications and work alongside them to make sure they can fit in with this kaupapa. So thanks for working this up nice and quickly. Awesome. All those in favour? Aye. Against? That is carried. Oh, sure. Okay. So Councillor Pravanov against division. So all those in favour, could you raise your hands?
So in favour, Councillor Halliday, Councillor Coe, Councillor Kirby, Councillor Hanford, Councillor Warwick, Councillor Wilson.
No, unfortunately not. Yeah.
Sorry,
Councillor
Councillor
Coe.
Spires, and I think that's in favour.
It's a hand, yeah.
Councillor Coford.
And those against?
Councillor Pravanov and Councillor Cooper.
Cool. Thanks, team. Thanks, Rob and Ninka. Awesome. So we will now take a break up until. Yeah, is it 1 o'clock? Yeah, 1:06. Yeah, 1:30. So that gives us a 25-minute break, and then we'll resume back for our one public excluded item. Thanks, team. Enjoy your lunch break.